in the newspaper review. But Erin is going to start first with US President Donald Trump, battle with coronavirus. US papers saying shrouded in mystery, Erin.
That's right, Stuart. Medical experts have pointed out that the president's treatment, so steroids and an experimental antibody cocktail, along with revelations about fluctuating oxygen levels over the weekend, suggest that he may be much sicker than the White House suggests. The use of that steroid in particular is only recommended by the World Health Organization for people who have severe cases of coronavirus. And in two press conferences over the weekend, the president's doctors nonetheless seemed relatively optimistic about his state, even suggesting that he may be able to return to the office as early as today. It has the New York Times wondering if the Trump administration is actively misleading the American public about the extent of his illness, highlighting several details that are still unclear, including the exact date that he was diagnosed, how high his fever has been, and precisely, of course, why he was hospitalized. Now, the papers have offered a few different possibilities for the inconsistencies, including the fact that he may be actually directing his own treatment, wanting to take the different cocktails, or that he's being treated this way out of an abundance of caution because he is the American president. Now, for The Atlantic, nonetheless, the trajectory of his illness demonstrates, most importantly, his failure to protect not only himself, but his own political advisors and aides in the White House. People who were around him in the run-up to his diagnosis were only informed of his positive test result through the press. There was no kind of protocol, it sounds like, in the White House to warn people who had been exposed to him that he was indeed positive. And the magazine also points out that the president went to a fundraiser on Thursday, despite having apparently showed symptoms the day prior. So it has The Atlantic wondering why anyone would believe that Trump is really interested in or has Americans' best interests at heart if he can't protect his own administration. So those criticisms likely to be revamped, kind of, especially given yesterday he kind of took a tour and said hi to supporters, which of course exposed his security detail to the virus indirectly.
Let's go back to that story about the Pope. The Pope releasing his new encyclical, many seeing it as particularly ideological.
That's right, Stuart. It's the cover of the French Christian paper La Croix today. The headline reads, "Brotherhood will save humanity." That's because in his third encyclical, which, as Catherine mentioned, is essentially a book-length letter addressed to the Catholic community, well, this time it's centered on what the Pope views as increasingly backwards-moving world, where conflict, nationalism, and equality are on the rise. But he is not all doom and gloom in this piece, suggesting a series of solutions to improve the situation through brotherhood. And he views that as including more equality-based economic measures, welcoming migrants, and making resources more widely available to all. Now, the Washington Post highlights his criticism, again, as Catherine had mentioned, of consumerism, empty individualism, and the free market, which makes it the most political encyclical, according to an Italian bishop quoting in this Washington Post piece. The paper also suggests that unlike past encyclicals, this one was addressed overtly to not only Catholics, but to everyone, all well-meaning people in society. The paper does point out, however, that he did not mention some of Catholicism's major crises, including the role of women and the LGBT community in the church, and of course, sex crimes committed by Catholic clerics against minors.
Okay, there you go. Cover that one in full now then, haven't we? The words papers are also looking at the ongoing conflict. This is, of course, between Armenia and Azerbaijan today.
That's right, Stuart, and with quite a diplomatic angle today, I would say. I'll start with Swiss paper Le Temps, which is focused on Russia. The Swiss paper describing Russia's role as enigmatic, and this despite the fact that it has ties to both former Soviet republics, of course. The paper also reminds readers that the Kremlin actually is the main arms supplier to both sides, which the paper describes as a cynical result of Russia's attempt to create balance between them. An expert on the Caucasus region in this piece said that for her, the conflict is symptomatic of a global transition from multilateralism to multipolarity, where governments are kind of increasingly focused on taking official sides instead of working things out diplomatically with all sides. The Guardian also covered the diplomatic angle, focusing on the United States, saying again that the White House has been largely silent on this matter, and that it's the latest in a series of the White House kind of taking the back seat on diplomatic issues, especially when it involves Russia. As other examples, the paper cites that the U.S. has been relatively silent on the political crisis in Belarus, and was also pretty silent on the poisoning of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. So this, for them, is kind of the latest in that series. And finally, for the pro-government Turkish paper, the Daily Sabah, Turkey is the most important actor. The paper concluding that there is no solution without Ankara, and it cites President Erdogan's speech in which he recently said that Turkey's strategic and geographical position in the heart of where conflicts so often occur mean that it is best suited to fill the emerging power vacuums and to find a solution.
And finally, from Erin, scientists are placing their bets, and this is on a rather unsavoury solution to cognitive decline.
That's right, Stuart. Unexpected, but something that's making international scientists pretty optimistic. Now, this is based on the medical community's growing recognition of the connection between our brains and our stomachs, which a lot more research has been done on in recent years. So they're looking at waste produced by the intestine as a miracle cure to cognitive decline, as you mentioned. Now, this is based on research that performed fecal transplants in older mice to younger mice and found that that altered their gut bacteria, which in turn impacted their memory. So they are expecting that this could eventually lead to therapies that would, again, counter cognitive decline in older patients.
Well, there you go. You see, you learn something new every day on this program, don't you? Erin, thanks very much. Erin Gunke with the newspapers on France 24.